FTE 211, 1911 Master Armorer's course. It's 22 August 2025. This is week 7 of this course. Real quick, let's go ahead and pair this firearm. I am both visually and physically inspecting the chamber and magazine well. This firearm is safe. I also have no live ammunition in my work area at all. It is all locked up. So last week we did quite a bit of trigger work, and this week we'll be doing the final bit of that trigger work by using the trigger track stone, and we're going to deburr the trigger tracks and see how much that benefits. But before we get to that, since we did all of that work last week, I'm going to go ahead and log exactly how much the trigger pull has been improved since we did that work last week. So I did test this trigger beforehand, and I was getting about 5.15 pounds on the trigger pull before the work was completed. This is post-trigger work. I've tested the trigger pull doesn't change if you rack the slide versus just pulling the hammer back. So I'm going to pull the hammer back using Velcro to keep the grip safety in. So we're going to get this on the middle. First pull. 3 pounds, 5.7 ounces. Second pull. 4 pounds, 10.7 ounces. And third pull. 4 pounds, 9.1 ounces. So, okay, so for part 1, we've got 5 miniature prompts. First thing is analyze when trigger work is necessary or should be performed and when it should not be performed. So, trigger work is necessary depending on what the use of the gun is going to be. For example, you might want a lighter trigger pull if this is going to be a competition gun. So that might necessitate some trigger work to get a smoother and lighter trigger pull, so you get better trigger feel and better trigger pull. If you want this to be a self-defense gun, you might want that trigger to be a little bit on the heavier side, both for legalities as well as safety. Improper trigger work would be any trigger work that takes this firearm into an unsafe condition. If it negates the ability for either the grip safety or the thumb safety to do their job, which is prevent the hammer from dropping, then that should not be performed. That's kind of my view of trigger work. Safety is paramount. Fitment and interaction between specific components of the fire control group. So, fire control group, you've got your trigger and your trigger bow, which interacts here with the disconnector and the sear. And those two are together. It's kind of hard, even though I've got these pins here. You can see right there the sear interacting with the teeth of the hammer, or the hammer hooks technically. And then right here you've got your hammer strut that is actually inside of your mainspring housing and is being pressed. It's trying to go forward at all times and being retained by the sear. What happens is, as the trigger is pulled backwards, it pushes on the disconnector, which also pushes on the sear, gets the sear away from the hooks, and allows the hammer to fall. If we wanted to improve the operation of the fire control group, things we can do, and which have been done on some of this, is you can polish the trigger bow, both the top and the surfaces. You're just deburring and polishing to make it smoother. You can polish the head of the disconnector as well as the paddle, and where all these surfaces interact with each other. The sides of the hammer where they interact with the frame. You can also polish the hammer hooks as well, where the sear engages, right there. You can polish the sear spring, these two right here. And then you can also, this middle spring, if you wanted to bend it back this way, you'll get a little bit stiffer trigger pull. Back this way, a little bit looser trigger pull. And that's really it for part. Oh, and the last thing is you can deburr and polish the actual trigger track inside the frame, which will really help smooth out that trigger pull, and is actually what we'll be doing this week. Some aftermarket tools and jigs that can be used to make trigger work easier, and if they're essential or not. There's a tool designed for the trigger bow. You put the trigger on it, and then you just lightly tap with like a brass hammer to get the proper dimensions for the trigger bow. I personally would consider that essential if you wanted to get everything perfect. Also essential if you're wanting to improve fitment of your sear and hammer hooks. Polishing can be done, but then there's also jigs to get a little bit better engagement. Work more towards that neutral with to put a bevel on there, so you get that neutral with bevel engagement, which is both safe and optimal trigger pull. Well, also obviously like a trigger track stone here, it's designed to fit right inside the trigger track. I mean, it's not essential. You can find ways to polish that, but this is going to be nice and uniform, fits perfectly, really reduce the risk of taking off too much material. So now we're just going to use this trigger track stone to deburr. Polishing the trigger bow and deburring that, we did that last week. So since we did some work on this gun, we want to go ahead and do a dry and demi round check. This is the dry check, there's nothing in there. All I'm looking for is just smooth movement of components. Everything's interacting like it should. Hammer went back as the slide went back, disconnector is not hanging up. All that stuff looks good. While we're here and the hammer is cocked, we'll go ahead and test our safety. So, thumb safety on, pull the trigger, nothing happens. Thumb safety with grip safety on, pull the trigger, nothing happens. Thumb safety off, pull the trigger, nothing happens. Thumb safety off, grip safety on, hammer falls. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a dummy round test. I've got 2 snap caps in the magazine. Okay, so we just fed, chambered, and locked. Now we're going to pull the trigger. Hammer should fall. We're looking for ejection. Round ejected. We're going to listen for the hammer reset. Hammer reset. Pull the trigger again. Hammer falls. Now we're looking for ejection and for the slide to lock back. Slide lock back. Hammer reset. And it passes the dummy round check. So for part 4, we're going to discuss the top 3 alterations that I would consider doing to my 1911. I've actually done a few of them. First thing I did is the grips. The grips that came with it were plastic and they were not very good. These are a little bit better grip, but they just look better. Major reason I did that. I also swapped out the trigger with a Wilson Combat ultralight match grade trigger. I haven't tested it yet, but I will test it and put that on the video. It feels very, very crisp. Obviously, you can adjust the take up and everything on it, and it just feels smoother already. And then finally, I also added an extended slide lock release. The main reason I did that is I've got small hands, so I don't have to adjust my grip to reach it. So that's the primary reason I did that. I also have a full-length guide rod on the way. I've heard that helps for smoother cycling, which I'm all for. Trying to think. And I also have a titanium firing pin on the way. So first pull with the Wilson Combat trigger. We'll see how this goes. 3.144, 3.48, and 3.11.